All right, welcome into today's show. I'm joined by a return guest, Mr. Bobby Gay with Sweet Meat Butcher Shop. He's joining us all the way from Gainesville, Florida. Bobby, your second appearance on the show. Thanks for joining us, my friend.
Hey, thanks for being here and looking forward to talking all things barbecue with you.
I love it. So, for our listeners, the last time Bobby was on, we were talking a lot about, he as a competitor, his team, and we were able to connect I believe we connected at the Dilly Dally and Dooley back in last February, I think is where we first connected, if I remember correctly. But this time, a lot's changed since Bobby was on the show almost a year ago. It's crazy. It's almost been that long already. A lot has changed, and Bobby is on the cusp of opening up his own butcher shop, Sweet Meat Butcher Shop, down in Gainesville, Florida, and that's going to open pretty much any day soon now, right?
Yeah, so we're probably about a couple months out. So, still some finishing touches to put on the business, but we're getting really close now. So we can see the light at the end of the tunnel.
I love that. I love that. And for our listeners, take some time and follow Bobby's journey with this butcher shop. You can find him at Sweet Meat Butcher Shop, Bobby G. That's BOBBY G on Instagram, and at Sweet Meat Butcher Shop on Facebook. And so instead of talking about journey into competitive barbecue, we're going to talk about journey into owning a butcher shop, because that is exactly what Bobby is doing. And so I'm curious, educate us on this journey, this what was the why behind you deciding, hey, you know what? I want to open up a butcher shop.
Sure. Well, that journey started in early 2021. My wife's a nurse practitioner and in pediatrics, and she was just overwhelmed with COVID patients and myself. I've been in the industrial sector for over 20 years, and we saw that at work, and so we went through that. We were definitely both burnt out, and in May of 2021, I went through a significant injury at work. So I was burned with had sustained a chemical burn, and had to be life flighted to Augusta Burn Center. And after I guess when I was in recovery, my wife said, "Why don't we open up a butcher shop?" And there you go. That's where the dream began. I have a couple buddies that own butcher shops. One in the Atlanta market and another in Cordele, and they're both successful. Neither one had a lot of experience with butcher shops prior to opening them, and we went down and met with both and decided this is something that I want to do. I think competition barbecue kind of lends itself to butchery. We have to to fine tune meats when we turn them in and make them look good for the box. So it kind of lends itself into being a better butcher. So that's really where the dream began, and you know through this journey over I guess a year and a half, we're about to it's about to come to fruition.
I love that. So, the biggest thing I love about that story is that you just decided to do something and you did it. And I think that right there is a big theme that we have here on the show. Whether you're starting a butcher shop, whether you're starting to compete, backyard, pro, whether you open up a restaurant, I think the biggest thing you can do is commit to it and do it. So that's awesome to hear. Obviously, a lot of work, a lot of anxiety, I'm sure, a lot of sweat equity, so to speak. But I love hearing stories like that. So, well, let's talk about the meat. Let's talk about the butcher shop itself. And one big question I have is, in your local market there in Gainesville, what's your vision for the butcher shop? What's your vision to rise above and separate yourself amongst the various other competitors that you're going to face in the marketplace?
Sure. Well, to really differentiate ourselves, our business is essentially going to be four revenue streams into one business. So, first, our core business is the butcher shop itself. So, selling meat to from A to B, from customers walking in the door, and we want to have a more of a traditional butcher shop with display cases instead of tray packing. And I don't think you can operate a butcher shop without tray packing, but for the most part, we want to have that service interaction between customers. So we want to be able to recommend certain types of meat products that customers want and maybe don't know about. So that could be like a chuck roll steak, or it could be a flat iron. You know, different grades of beef. So our goal is to carry a base of upper 2/3 choice, prime, and then multiple sectors of wagyu. So there's American wagyu that's Japanese wagyu cattle genetics bred with Angus. So there's Australian wagyu, which is a lot like American wagyu, but I think it's in some ways better. And then Japanese wagyu, if you've ever seen it, is the marbling in it's crazy. So we want to carry that as well. And we have a price point for all range of customers walking in the door. So that's one. As far as pork goes, we're going to carry Prairie Fresh products. So I struck up a relationship with David Earhart and Bob Comito with Prairie Fresh, and they were able to put me in in a relationship with a purveyor. So we'll be carrying that as pork. We also have the availability of Compart pork as well. So that's a very high-end pork product. So very good pork and beef products there. We're also going to carry some exotics. So we'll carry elk. We'll carry some venison and some other exotics. I actually ran across one the other day about kangaroo meat. So I don't know how many people would want kangaroo, but we have the availability to get it if you'd like it. So that's just some of the things that we're looking at getting for the butcher shop for the core base model. So we're going to be a catering company. So recently we've dipped our toe into the catering side of things, and I was able to to cook a whole hog and a few other things for a local fraternity, and it was a huge hit. So that's something that we'll be able to offer that not a lot of people in Gainesville can provide. So we'll be able to cater a whole hog dinner for you if you like. So that's kind of the second sector of the business, and then third, barbecue supply. So we're going to be carrying the upper competition rubs and sauces. We're going to be carrying Heath Riles products, Myron Mixon's products, Tillman's barbecue products. I don't know if you've heard of Tillman Lee Nelson or not, but we're going to be carrying his stuff, and Mr. Rub Badby's Swamp Boys products, and Sweet Smoke Q as well. So we're going to have a little Florida flair in our butcher shop too. And then lastly, we're going to build our own smokers. So I've partnered with a fabrication company to build offset patio smokers. We don't really want to venture too far out from that space. We want to stay where we're comfortable with for now. And so we'll be able to provide patio models for people coming in and looking to buy a high-end smoker. Additionally, we're going to be carrying drum smokers, more than likely big green eggs and pellet smokers as well. So a lot to offer the general public in our shop.
So literally a one-stop shop for any barbecue fanatic, newbie, professional, you name it. Doesn't matter what stage they're in, if they're trying to become king of the backyard or they're trying to win a couple of GCs. It sounds like you're going to have them covered. And I think, I don't know every butcher shop in the country, obviously, but I think that model right there is unique in and of itself, right? Which right there sets you apart. But one thing you said that really struck me, and I think it's important for listeners to understand this. If you're listening to the show and you're, have this mindset of, hey, I want to start my own business, whatever it may be, catering, butcher shop, smoker company, you fill in the blank. One thing that Bobby just said, it was around service. And I think that is huge, especially when you have, you're a product-based business and you're not the only game in town, right? They can get those products from someone else. You have to really commit to service. And that was actually one of the first things that you said when I asked that question. So I love that, because ultimately And we just had another guest on the show that talked about this, talked about, making people feel good, those people that you interact with, making them feel good about the experience. They may not buy anything from you, but they walk out of there feeling good. And most times they're going to tell their neighbor, they're going to tell their friends, hey, go check out Sweet Meat Butcher Shop. They were super nice, et cetera, et cetera. And you and I both know if they have a negative experience, they're going to tell 100 people. Right. That's just how it works. But I love what you said there about service, because I would agree. I think that's a great way to really set yourself apart, and, offering those multiple different lines of products, I think, is unique in and of itself. So hats off to you, sir. I mean, that's a bold move, right? I'm sure it's a lot, taking it on a lot. But that's exciting. I'm excited to make a trip down to Gainesville to see it. Now, for those that are in the Gainesville area, what part do you have a location? Can you tell us anything about that?
Sure. Actually, the location is in High Springs, Florida, which is just north of Gainesville. So it's like a suburb of the Gainesville market. It's in between Lake City and Gainesville, off of exit 399. The funny thing is, in this journey, we've gone through 5 different sites. So the very first site we picked out, we were a week before closing. That was right before our very first discussion, and we had a seller back out. So we go back through the drawing board. We find another one. We get a contract, and we had another issue with it. So finally, on site 5, we found one that worked well. So it's a 2-acre site, 3,000 square foot plus building, and it's really a blessing in disguise. So we have the area to do a lot of different things. One thing that I want to do is I want to do a hog shootout. So I want to do. I'm kind of addicted to cooking whole hogs now. So I've cooked a few now, and it's fun. So what I want to do is maybe partner up with MBN. If anybody out there listening can shoot me some info on them, I'd love to talk to them. But I want to do a hog shootout. So let's get competition teams. Let's find out who can cook the best whole hog, and we'll figure out prize money and that kind of thing, and make it worth their while. I think that's a cool little facet to competition barbecue that not a whole lot of people do. So we can do steak cook-offs there. I mean, there's a lot of room to do stuff. I'm building a back patio at this facility, so we're going to do barbecue classes. So, by no means am I a world champion in barbecue, but I do think that I do have a skill set that I can get somebody on the path to competition. So we're going to offer classes in competition barbecue, but we're also going to do one for beginners. So like a barbecue 101 deal. So teach them how to manage a fire, teach them how to run their smoker at home to cook great barbecue. And there's a million ways to cook barbecue, but with my fleet of smokers I have, pretty much can run the gamut on any smoker you have, between pellet smokers all the way to a whole hog cooker. So that's something that we can do to differentiate ourselves even further from other competition.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm with you. I love cooking a whole hog. It's challenging. It is a lot of work, but I love the challenge of the different, parts of the hog that you have to turn in. They cook differently. And I think I want to camp out on something you said. Well, 2 things really that struck me. And that is, number one, just because you're not a grand champion or a world champion or fill in the blank doesn't mean that you don't know more about barbecue than 90% of the population. And I think that's really, really important, because there's a lot of teams out there. There's a lot of folks that I talk to that say things like, well, I don't have any grand champions or reserve, and I said, look, you don't need that to teach 90% of the population how to be a better backyard cook. And so I love how you're not shying away from that. I think you're right on the money. Let's face it, you and I think it's reasonable to say that you and I and other, pro teams, backyard teams out there that consistently cook, we know more than 90% of the population. I think that's a fair statement to make. And I think there's absolutely value in what you can bring to the table there. So yeah, couldn't agree with you more on that. That's a big thing that I'm pushing for right now, just in on social media, is to get folks to, hey, share what you know. You may not have 17 grand champions, you may not be in the Hall of Fame, but you probably know more than most people. So I love that aspect of it. Now let's camp out on the whole hog piece, because I'm curious about this. What about the whole hog? What about it? Do you enjoy? Because you said it was one of your favorite things to cook. So let's camp out on that. What about that whole hog makes it your favorite thing to cook?
Well, I think it's the point that you brought up. It's different parts that you pull cook at different temps. So you got to manage your hams differently, as opposed to shoulders, because hams are going to be around that 185, 190 mark. Your shoulders are going to they're going to need to be around 198, 195. And the biggest one is loin and bacon meat. Specifically loin. Your loins are going to finish around that 140ish mark, and if you go much higher than that, you're going to dry them out. So that's a technique in itself, and there's a lot of different tricks that are used to keep them from drying out. So and then really from a presentation standpoint, depending on how you cook your hog, it can really be a challenge. If you did like a robo hog like the shed does, I can't imagine how difficult it is to have a loin turn out perfect. Because I don't know if you've ever seen it. They have this little device where they go like a racing hog. So they stand the hog up on a apparatus that they've fabricated. So the presentation is immaculate. And obviously it's done pretty well for them. I think they've won Memphis in May a few times with it. But the hogs I've cooked have been belly up, and you know, it's definitely a challenge to make sure your loins turn out right. So that's really the challenge, is making sure all three pieces or areas turn out, the right temp.
That's exactly right. And the good news is, down in in the southeast where we, are located, there's some of the best hog cookers in the world. You got teams like Bubba Grills. You've got over in Mississippi, you've got Hog Addiction. You've got some, Boom Boom Q. I mean, you've got some big time hog cooking teams, and I think, I think having a competition like that with the MBN, I think would be obviously a great promotional tool for you, but just a great way to get the community involved and bring awareness to not just the sport. I mean, the sport's one thing, but for me, I want to bring awareness to barbecue in general. Doesn't matter if they want to go compete or not. If I can help them, become a better backyard cooker at their own house, then I feel like I've done my job. So, I love that mentality that you have, that philosophy that you have of, just, giving back, right? Paying it forward, so to speak, all the things you've learned and trying to help others. So hats off to you, man. I think that you've got a very unique setup, and I'm excited to see it all come together because, as I said, going to, it's one thing to go to a grocery store and buy the meat. It's another thing to go to a butcher shop where the people there know what they're doing, right? And they know, what they can take the information you give them and be able to make a recommendation. Same way that if you went to a nice restaurant, you'd have the wine sommelier. You tell he or she what you're looking for, and they come up with a prescription, so to speak. So I love that aspect of it, and I think it's going to do really well. I think that, as there's a lot of great teams. Shoot, there's a lot of great teams probably within about a 30-mile radius of you, right?
Oh yeah.
You
Sure.
mentioned one of them, and he's been on the show, Mr. Rub Begbie with Swamp Boys. I mean, he's Hall of Famer himself. Had lines a mile long at Pig Fest when we were down there in January. So I think that's great, man. Now tell me this. So you mentioned some of the challenges along the journey. You talked about, you had contract, seller backed out, then the next one didn't work out, and basically you had to go to, I think you said fifth property, right? Was
Yep.
kind of the finally you were able to get it. What other challenges were you faced with, throughout this process, that may be helpful for others to hear? Because I'm sure we've got some folks listening that might be saying, "Hey, you know what? I'd love to open up a barbecue supply or a butcher shop or whatever." What were some of those challenges? I'm curious.
Sure. I think the biggest challenge that we faced was really equipment. So
Hmm.
equipment has gone up dramatically over the last 3 or 4 years. So it's probably doubled in price. And then you better know your electrical requirements, because if you're going to open up a butcher shop, you really need three phase. So most places have three phase electrical power, but you know I didn't. So so I've had to work around those challenges. So it was just cost prohibitive to run three phase where my building is. So the quote I got was astronomical, and it was just cost prohibitive. From a supply chain standpoint, walk-in coolers and display coolers, that's you can find reach-in coolers and freezers. They're everywhere. But finding walk-in coolers and walk-in freezers, um, that's a challenge because of the really the condenser shortage that's out there. So you may wait months upon months to get your condensers for your walk-ins, and even the panels. The foam product that's used to make walk-in coolers. There's a shortage of it. So that was another obstacle that we had to to jump through. So we originally were going to open in January, but because of some of those issues right there, that prevented us from being able to open. So now we're on the tail end of that, and we're actually building the walk-in coolers here in the next couple of weeks. So we'll be right on time.
I
For
love that. So what I heard there was know what kind of electrical output or input. I'm not an electrician, as you can tell, but know electricity, know what you need, and order
yep,
your equipment way ahead of time. So,
absolutely, absolutely, and get good stuff. So hey, the crazy one that got us early, I think it was Site 3, was DOT actually. I won't say blocked us, from building a site, but they made it cost prohibitive on a particular highway we were trying to go to. So the population density on this particular highway was such that we couldn't build a shop to to go into without putting in a turn lane and a turn signal. So the prices on
wow,
those are pretty dramatic. So it's $500,000. So I said, well,
wow.
we got to walk away. So it's pretty cost prohibitive for us to build on a particular site we were looking at. But like I said, the one we have now is a blessing in disguise. It's 2 acre site, and we have a lot of room to do a lot of different things.
The DOT was certainly a big surprise, something I wouldn't even consider, and hopefully that's helpful to somebody listening. That that could be should be a consideration. But you're right, $500,000 for that. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
No, not at all. Not at all. Yeah, you talked earlier about giving back to barbecue, and you and I have talked extensively about how do we grow barbecue, competition barbecue, but barbecue in general too. And one of the things that my wife and I talked about early on was it's really expensive to compete in competition barbecue. And one of the things that we want to do to give back is we want to offer a cost plus 20% deal for all competition teams, and we feel that's a way that we can give back to competition barbecue, and really try to help grow the sport and alleviate some of the cost it takes to compete, because $1,000 to $1,500 a contest, that's a lot of money. So if we can help alleviate that, that's really that's one of the things we want to do as a shop, is to help grow the sport by doing so.
And you're right, that's huge. I mean, I think at the end of the day, passion for barbecue is a big deal. Otherwise, why would people do it if they're not passionate about it? And I've heard, a lot of folks say that, hey, I love barbecue. It's a hobby. I'm not really I'm not really concerned on trying to break even or anything like that. And I get that. However, on the flip side of that, if it's not financially sustainable long term, then you really got to take a hard look in the mirror, in my opinion, and say, okay, is this something, you know, I'm going to commit to, knowing full well that financially this doesn't make sense long term? Because competition barbecue, as we all know, is not a good retirement strategy. it's it's
No,
just
not at
it's
all.
just it's not. And it's like most hobbies, right? But I think it's finding that balance. And obviously, how do you find that balance? Some of the bigger teams, of course, have their own rubs and they do classes, and they have sauces, etc. And that's one way they help offset that. And I think that's really where the future is going, in my opinion. I think that's where the future, because something's got to give. You talked about equipment prices, and it's hard to get equipment. Equipment prices are through the roof. Same with meat and other supplies. At some point, it's gonna come to a head, I think, and people are gonna take a step back and say, wait a minute, financially long term, this doesn't make any sense. And frankly, I mean, to be totally candid with you and the listeners, I mean, that's where we are right now. We did 18 competitions last year. I look back on it. We had a lot of fun, met a lot of great people, learned a lot about barbecue. Don't regret any of it. But if I look at it from a purely business and financial standpoint, it was a terrible decision.
Yep.
There's no two ways around it. And so this year, I said, okay, well, let's really focus on the competitions that we enjoyed. Let's not do so many. Let's focus on larger ones. And then let's, layer in some other things like a lot of other teams do. They might do some catering, like you talked about, doing some catering, cooking for, big events like the Super Bowl. We just had that, things like that. I think more and more teams are going to get into that. And this is actually a great lead in to the last thing I wanted to chat about, and that is the future of competition barbecue, right? Because you and I both know, and other teams listening know, or they should know, that it's no secret. Competition barbecue has really scaled back over the last 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, it really
There's
has.
less competitions, less cooks. Here's my question to you. What do we need to do, or what can we do as teams to help right the ship and bring in more teams? And here's the big one: provide more value to these event organizers. What are your thoughts there?
Sure. Well, I think the first thing is, I think Memphis in May did something really cool that I heard about. I've never been there. That's a bucket list thing for me to contest for me to go cook. Um, One thing I've heard that they've done is they do MVP or VIP experiences. So a fan will buy a ticket and they're able to go to a competition trailer or a tent and see what really goes on behind the scenes. So the team gets a benefit because they gain exposure, to a fan base. The contest organizer makes money on it, so they can recoup some of their costs, and the fans get a good experience. So they're able to really see, taste, and feel, what it is to compete in competition barbecue. So that's one thing that I think would be a great idea. I don't know if I highly doubt all cook teams would want to commit to doing that, but I think it's something that you should definitely think about.
Yeah.
Partner with a purveyor. We would love to partner with some folks. If teams would donate some of their time and effort to help grow my brand by maybe coming in and cooking a class or something like that, then it gives you exposure, and we could work out a deal to alleviate some costs for you on the meat side. So I'm definitely not opposed to that. Obviously, I can't do it for a ton of teams, but I would definitely be
Right.
all ears for a few. And the biggest thing is, I think more people need to do classes. The more people that know about this sport and get involved in it, the better. So, and it may just be somebody's nervous about cooking a brisket. I think in the first show, God knows I was probably the worst in the world at it, but I've gotten substantially better. So I was trying to make bombs out of gas grills, trying to cook a brisket. So if I can get to a point where I'm getting calls in brisket, and I can teach somebody to do the same. And there's 1,000 people better than I am than at brisket. But that's one way to do it, is teach more classes, get more people involved. So do demonstrations. That those are a few items that could help grow the sport.
Well, you hit the nail right on the head with your, you talked about Memphis in May and what they did. I think that's a great strategy to, one, for teams to provide value to the organizer so that it's a two-way street. And secondly, to get the general public engaged. Even had one guest on the show, we were just brainstorming ideas, and he thought, well, why not incentivize teams that agree to give, for lack of a better term, a VIP tour or whatever you want to call it, incentivize them, say, hey, we'll give you an extra point on the scoring, which, like in KCBS world, FBA too. I mean, 1 point can mean the difference between, GC and third place. So,
Yep.
So that, I think that's a valid, or argument or point to make there is that could be a way to incentivize that. Like you said, not every team's going to want to do it, and that's okay. The challenge is if every team has that mindset, then eventually it's just going to die off. That's just the harsh reality of it. So, yeah, I love what you said about, bringing some teams in, doing some classes, or even just teaching their own classes. I think you're dead on the money. You don't have to be a grand champion to teach a class. Same token, you also shouldn't be charging $1,000 either. So, if you've got a whole shelf full of grand champions, that's different. Or a bunch of reserves and all that, that's different. But I still think as we talked about earlier, you can still provide value, you can still help others, because most of us know more than 90% of the population. So again, for our listeners, Bobby's one of our favorite guests. You actually hold the title, 2 titles actually on the show. You have the most listened to episode, still running, 45 episodes later, and you're the first returning guest we've had. So you've got two different titles that you hold. But for our listeners, make sure to check out Bobby and all the cool thing he's doing. Sweet Meat Butcher Shop on Facebook at Sweet Meat Butcher Shop, and then on Instagram at Sweet Meat Butcher Shop, Bobby G. Bobby, thanks again, sir. Enjoyed the conversation and appreciate you coming on the show.
Yes, sir. Thanks again, Kurt.